When my brother called me at 6:12 a.m. on a Wednesday and said, "I saw your wife at the airport yesterday, she wasn't alone," I laughed so hard I had to sit down on the edge of the bed. "You need glasses," I told him. "Or sleep. Or both." There was a pause on the line. My brother Mark had never been dramatic. He was the kind of man who measured his words like he measured lumber, twice before cutting once. "I'm not joking," he said quietly. She was holding hands with a man. They went through security together. Looked close. "That's impossible," I said. "She's in Denver. Her company retreat. I dropped her off myself on Monday." Another pause. Longer this time. "I took a picture," Mark said. "I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I thought maybe I was mistaken. But then I saw the way she looked at him. Like she didn't care who saw." My laugh died halfway through my chest. "Send it," I said. I said it calmly. Too calmly. The kind of calm that happens right before something breaks. The photo came through 10 seconds later. I stared at it for a long time. There was my wife, Ellen. My wife of 36 years. Standing in the departures terminal at JFK. Her head tilted slightly toward a man I had never seen before. Her hand wrapped around his forearm like it belonged there. Like it had always belonged there. She was smiling. Not her polite smile. Not the smile she gave neighbors or waiters or distant relatives. The private one. The one she used to give me when we were young and broke and believed the world was still something you could build together. I didn't hear Mark say my name the first time. "David," he said again. "Are you still there?" I was there. But I wasn't. I was standing in our bedroom, barefoot on hardwood floors I had refinished myself 20 years earlier. The morning light was coming through the curtains. The house smelled like coffee from the automatic timer I'd set the night before. Everything was normal. And nothing was. "I'll call you back," I said. I didn't. I'm 62 years old. I spent 40 years running a logistics company that started with one warehouse and ended with 6 regional hubs across 3 states. I built it from nothing, no investors, no shortcuts. Just long nights, missed vacations, and a belief that if you did things right, it would come back to you eventually. I retired 3 years ago. Sold my shares to the board. Kept a small advisory role and a larger silence. Ellen and I had plans. Travel. Grandkids someday. Quiet mornings. I thought I knew the woman I shared my life with. That photo suggested otherwise. For 2 days, I did nothing. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions. I didn't rage or cry or break anything. I observed. I went back through our shared calendar. The Denver retreat had been added 6 weeks earlier. Company name spelled slightly wrong. No hotel listed. No return flight noted. That alone meant nothing. Until I checked her email. I didn't go digging. I didn't need to. Ellen had always used the same password for everything, our anniversary date. She trusted me. Or she thought she did. The confirmation email wasn't from Denver. It was from Miami. One-way ticket. Returning 5 days later than she told me. I sat at my desk for a long time after that. Not angry. Not yet. Just aware. I called my attorney that afternoon. His name is Paul Reinhardt. We'd known each other since law school, back when neither of us had anything worth protecting. "I need discretion," I told him. "You always do," he said. "What's wrong?" "I think my wife is lying to me," I said. "And I need to know how deep it goes." He didn't ask questions. He gave me a name. A private investigator. Former federal. Expensive. Quiet. Her name was Laura Kim. She met me 2 days later at a diner off the interstate. Neutral ground. No paper trail. I don't chase affairs, she said after I explained. But I do follow money in patterns. Those usually tell the real story. I don't care about the affair, I said. I care about the truth. She nodded. That's usually what people say. Rarely what they mean. She was wrong about that. Ellen came home on Friday evening, right on schedule. She hugged me in the doorway. Smelled like citrus shampoo and something else I didn't recognize. Denver was exhausting, she said. I'm glad to be home. I smiled. I kissed her cheek. I asked about her coworkers. I listened. She lied easily. Too easily. That night, lying beside her in bed, listening to her breathe, I realized something important. I wasn't heartbroken. I was insulted. For weeks, I played my part. Husband. Listener. Companion. Laura worked quietly. When she called me back, her voice was steady. You should sit down, she said. I already was. The man in the photo is named Andrew Cole, she said. 59. Former investment advisor. Lost his license 8 years ago after an SEC investigation. No prison time. Cooperated. Slippery. I closed my eyes. They've been involved for just over 5 years, she continued. Meeting quarterly at first. Then more often. Flights routed through different cities. Hotels booked under corporate conference names. And Denver? I asked. Never happened. She sent me the files that night. Bank transfers. Small at first. Then larger. Always under thresholds that would flag automatic reviews. Always from joint accounts I rarely checked anymore. Over 5 years, Ellen had moved just under $600,000. My money. Our money. Into accounts under Shell LLC's Andrew controlled. She's planning to leave, Laura said. They both are. Where? Portugal. Property already purchased. Cash. I sat there long after the call ended. I thought of the years Ellen told me she didn't care about money. That she loved our quiet life. That she was proud of what I'd built. She hadn't wanted the life. She'd wanted the exit. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to understand how far the rot went. That's when Laura found the last piece. My nephew-in-law, Brian. He'd been working at my company since his mid-20s. Smart. Ambitious. I'd mentored him personally. Trusted him with vendor negotiations. Let him sit in on board calls. He's connected, Laura said. Andrew's cousin. They grew up together. My hands curled into fists. Brian had been approving inflated contracts. Routing payments through logistics firms Andrew controlled. Cleaning it through Ellen's accounts. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a coordinated extraction. They hadn't underestimated me. They'd dismissed me. I met Brian the following week for lunch. He talked about expansion. About new routes. About how proud he was to be part of the company's legacy. I nodded. Smiled. Then I told him I was thinking of stepping back in more actively. Maybe reviewing contracts again. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. That's great, he said too quickly. I watched the lie form. That night, Ellen asked me if everything was okay. You seem distant, she said. I'm thinking about the future, I told her. About us. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. 2 days later, Brian tried to move a large transfer. Too large. Laura had warned me he would. The bank flagged it. Paul was ready. So were federal investigators. The arrests happened quietly. No shouting. No drama. Brian was taken in at his office. Andrew at the airport. Ellen at home. She didn't resist. She just looked at me with a face I'd never seen before. Empty. I never meant to hurt you, she said. I didn't answer. There are words you don't get to say after a certain point. The trial took 11 months. Brian took a deal. 7 years. Andrew got 10. Ellen got 4. I attended none of it. I filed for divorce the day after her sentencing. People asked if I was angry. I wasn't. Anger implies surprise. I was finished. Now, my mornings are quiet again. Different quiet. Not the kind you plan for, but the kind you survive into. I walk. I read. I spend time with my brother. I rebuilt trust with myself first. That mattered more than anything else. Sometimes I think about the man who laughed when his brother called him at dawn. I don't judge him. He believed in the life he built. There are worse things than that. If there's a lesson here, it isn't about suspicion or paranoia. It's about paying attention. Not to words. To actions. Because the truth always shows itself eventually. Even at an airport. Even in a photograph. Even when you laugh, right before everything changes. I thought that was the end of it. That once the arrests were made and the paperwork filed and the house went quiet, the story would slowly fade into something manageable. Something I could carry without it cutting into me every time I thought about it. I was wrong. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was surgical. Like a limb removed cleanly, leaving your body unsure how to balance without it. The first morning after Ellen was taken away, I woke up at 5:30 out of habit. The bed was cold on her side. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, listening to the hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the distant sound of traffic. I realized something then that surprised me. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone else to wake up. I got out of bed, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table. The same table where Ellen and I had eaten dinner nearly every night for decades. The surface still had the small burn mark from the time she'd set a hot pan down without thinking. I used to tease her about it. That mark didn't bother me anymore. What bothered me was how quiet the house felt without the weight of pretending. The calls started that afternoon. Friends. Old colleagues. A few distant relatives who had read the local paper or heard whispers through back channels. Most didn't know what to say. Some said nothing at all, just breathed into the phone like they were afraid silence might offend me. Others said the usual things. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this. She always seemed so nice. That last one made me tighten my jaw every time. Niceness is a performance. Character is what happens when no one's watching. A week later, Paul came by the house. He brought documents, updates, timelines. He laid them out on the dining room table with the same care he used when we were younger and everything felt like it could still be fixed. The financial recovery will take time, he said. Some assets are gone. Offshore. We'll claw back what we can. I'm not worried about the money, I said. He looked at me carefully. You should be. I shook my head. I've lost more expensive things than money. He didn't argue. That night, I went into my office. The one room Ellen rarely entered. Shelves of old binders, framed photos of warehouses and teams and ribbon cuttings. Proof of a life built deliberately. I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. Inside was a notebook. I'd kept it during the early years of the company. Back when things were uncertain and every decision felt like it could end everything. I used to write at night when I couldn't sleep. Not plans. Not numbers. Thoughts. Doubts. Promises to myself. I flipped through the pages slowly. One line stood out, written in shaky ink nearly 30 years ago. If I ever stop paying attention, this will all fall apart. I closed the notebook and laughed. Not out loud. Just a breath of air through my nose. I hadn't stopped paying attention to the business. I'd stopped paying attention at home. Ellen called me once from jail. The number came up restricted. I knew who it was before I answered. I listened. She cried. She apologized. She told me she felt trapped, unseen, lonely. She said Andrew made her feel alive again. I let her finish. Then I said one sentence. You didn't feel trapped when you were wiring money out of our accounts. Silence. I trusted you, I continued. And you used that trust as camouflage. She asked if we could talk again. I said no. That was the last time we spoke. The divorce finalized 6 months later. Clean. Clinical. No courtroom drama. Just signatures and stamps and a quiet acknowledgement that something long dead was finally being buried. I sold the house the following spring. People were surprised by that. They assumed I'd want to hold on to it for sentimental reasons. But sentiment is heavy. I bought a smaller place near the river. 1 floor. Big windows. Nothing fancy. Everything intentional. I still advise the company occasionally. Not because I need to, but because I enjoy seeing it continue without me controlling every piece. Brian's desk is gone now. His name removed from records. The work he touched rebuilt from scratch. I didn't tell many people what happened to him. I didn't need to. Consequences don't require announcements. My brother comes by every Sunday now. We sit on the porch. Drink coffee. Talk about things that don't matter much. He never brings up the photo. I don't either. Some events don't need revisiting to remain real. A few months ago, I met someone. Her name is Claire. She volunteers at the community library. She has gray in her hair and confidence in her voice. She laughs easily, but not carelessly. We started with conversations. Long ones. About books. About mistakes. About the strange freedom that comes with starting over when you didn't ask to. She knows my story. I didn't rush to tell it. But I didn't hide it either. She didn't flinch. That mattered. We take walks. We drink coffee. Sometimes we sit in comfortable silence and watch the river move like it has its own agenda. I don't know what the future looks like with her. And for the first time in my life, that doesn't scare me. Trust isn't something you give all at once anymore. It's something you build slowly, like a structure you expect to inspect often. I still think about that morning sometimes. The phone call. The laughter. The certainty I had that my life was exactly what I believed it to be. I don't feel foolish for that. Believing in your life isn't a weakness. Refusing to see the truth when it shows up is. If you're listening to this and something feels off in your world, don't panic. Don't accuse. Don't explode. Pay attention. Look twice. Ask yourself who benefits from your silence. Because betrayal rarely arrives loudly. It slips in quietly, wearing the face of routine, comfort, and trust. And when it reveals itself, the goal isn't revenge. It's clarity. It's reclaiming your footing. It's standing still long enough to decide what you'll carry forward and what you'll finally set down. I set down anger. I set down regret. I kept my dignity. And I kept my life. That's how this story ends. Not with shouting. Not with triumph. But with peace earned the hard way. And that's enough. There's one part of this story I haven't talked about yet. Not because it's dramatic. Not because it's shocking. But because it took me the longest to understand. About a year after everything happened, I was cleaning out a storage unit I'd kept since before Ellen and I were married. Old furniture. Boxes of paperwork. Things we never needed but couldn't quite let go of. At the back of the unit, buried under a tarp, was a wooden crate I hadn't opened in decades. Inside were photographs. Not framed. Not curated. Just loose prints from another lifetime. Ellen and me in our 20s, sitting on the hood of my first truck. Her hair pulled back, my arms slung awkwardly around her shoulders. We were both squinting at the sun, smiling like people who didn't yet know how complicated life could become. There were pictures of our first apartment. Bare walls. Mismatched furniture. A cheap clock on the wall that never kept time properly. I remembered fixing it 3 times before giving up. I sat on the concrete floor of that unit for a long time, holding those photos. And for the first time since the arrest, I allowed myself to grieve. Not the marriage. The illusion. The idea that if you do everything right, work hard, stay loyal, build slowly, you are somehow protected from being betrayed. That belief died in that storage unit. And strangely, that's when the real healing started. Because once you accept that life doesn't reward goodness automatically, you stop being naive without becoming bitter. You become precise. You choose who gets access to you. You choose what deserves your energy. You choose where your attention goes. I realized then that Ellen hadn't stolen my past. She had only revealed it. Those years weren't fake just because they ended badly. They were real because I was real in them. I loved honestly. I worked honestly. I trusted honestly. That still counts. A few weeks later, I took those photos home. I didn't throw them away. I didn't frame them either. I put them back in the crate, closed the lid, and stored it in the garage. Not as a shrine. Not as a wound. As a chapter. Claire came over one evening not long after that. We cooked dinner together. Simple food. Nothing fancy. Music playing softly in the background. At one point she asked, gently, "Do you ever miss her?" I thought about it before answering. "I miss who I thought she was," I said. "But I don't miss the life I was living at the end." She nodded. She didn't push. That's when I knew I could trust her, not because she demanded honesty, but because she respected it. These days, my life is smaller. And better. I wake up early because I want to, not because I have to. I read the news, then put it down. I walk along the river and watch people hurry past without knowing why they're rushing. Sometimes I see couples holding hands at the airport when I travel. I notice the way they lean into each other, the way they think the world can't see them. I don't feel anger. I feel awareness. Because I know now that love isn't proven by proximity or history or shared accounts. It's proven by what someone does when you're not looking. If there's one thing I hope someone listening to this takes away, it's this. Pay attention to patterns, not promises. Watch actions, not explanations. And never confuse familiarity with safety. You don't need to become suspicious of everyone. Just don't go blind for anyone. I laughed when my brother called me that morning. Not because I was foolish. But because I was certain. Certainty can be dangerous. Humility keeps you alive. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not afraid. I'm not lonely. I'm awake. And that, more than anything, is what they failed to take from me. That's the real ending. Not betrayal. Not revenge. Clarity. And a life rebuilt with eyes wide open. There's a strange thing that happens after everything settles. Not immediately. Not in the weeks or months after the fallout. But later. When the story is no longer fresh. When people stop asking questions. When your name isn't attached to whispers anymore. That's when you meet yourself again. One evening, almost 2 years after that phone call, I was sitting on my balcony watching the lights come on across the river. Boats moved slowly, deliberately, like they had nowhere urgent to be. I realized something then. For the first time in decades, no one was lying to me. Not a spouse. Not a business partner. Not a family member. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was honest. I thought back to the man I used to be, the one who believed loyalty was enough, that love guaranteed safety, that time alone created trust. I don't feel embarrassed for him. I feel respect. He built something real. He just trusted the wrong people to help protect it. That happens more often than anyone likes to admit. People ask me now, usually younger men, sometimes women too, how I knew when it was time to act. When suspicion turned into certainty. I always give them the same answer. I didn't act when I felt hurt, I tell them. I acted when the facts stopped lining up. Feelings lie. Patterns don't. If you're listening to this and you're in that place right now, where something feels wrong but you can't quite prove it, don't rush to confrontation. Don't demand answers you're not ready to hear. Slow down. Observe. Truth doesn't panic. Lies do. That's how you tell the difference. Claire and I are still seeing each other. No labels. No promises carved into stone. Just shared mornings, long conversations, and mutual respect. She once asked me if I'd ever marry again. I smiled and said, I don't know. And I meant it in the best possible way. Because certainty isn't something I chase anymore. I value clarity. I value consistency. I value peace. Marriage doesn't create those things. People do. Some nights, when the house is quiet and the world feels settled, I think about Ellen, not with anger, not with longing, but with distance. I wonder if she understands what she lost. Not the money. Not the house. Not the comfort. But the chance to grow old with someone who would have stood beside her through anything. That thought passes quickly. Regret is heavy, and I don't carry things that aren't mine anymore. My brother still calls every Sunday. Sometimes we laugh about nothing. Sometimes we sit in silence on the phone, each doing our own thing. That silence doesn't scare me now. It means everything is exactly as it should be. I laughed when he called me that morning at the airport. I don't laugh at that memory anymore. But I don't flinch either. It was the moment the illusion cracked. And once it did, I finally saw my life clearly, for the first time. Not perfect. Not painless. But honest. And that's a life worth keeping. That's where I am now. Still standing. Still choosing carefully. Still moving forward. One clear-eyed step at a time. There's one last thing I want to say, because stories like this tend to get misunderstood. People hear what happened to me and they think the ending is about winning. About outsmarting someone. About seeing people who betrayed you get punished. That's not the part that stayed with me. The part that stayed was the moment I realized I didn't need to prove anything anymore. For most of my adult life, I was building a company, a marriage, a reputation. I was always measuring, improving, fixing. Always thinking a few steps ahead, because that's what responsibility demands. When everything collapsed, I thought the hardest part would be rebuilding again. It wasn't. The hardest part was accepting that I didn't need to rebuild everything. Some things were never meant to be repaired. Some things are lessons, not foundations. I used to believe that endurance was the same thing as strength. That if you stayed long enough, tried hard enough, forgave enough times, things would eventually work out. Now I understand something different. Strength is knowing when to stop giving access. Endurance without awareness is just slow self-destruction. These days, I'm careful about what I let into my life. Not closed. Just intentional. I don't overshare. I don't overpromise. I don't assume longevity means loyalty. I watch how people treat small things. How they speak when they think no one important is listening. How they act when there's nothing to gain. That tells you everything. Sometimes I catch myself smiling at small, ordinary moments, the smell of coffee in the morning, the sound of footsteps in the hallway, the way the light shifts in the late afternoon. Those moments feel different now. They feel earned. If you're still listening to this, maybe it's because something in your own life doesn't sit right. Maybe you're holding on to a version of someone that no longer matches their behavior. Maybe you're laughing something off because facing it feels too heavy. I won't tell you what to do. But I will tell you this. Pay attention to what you're excusing. Pay attention to what you're explaining away. Pay attention to how often you're the one doing all the understanding. Because one day, you might get a phone call that changes everything. And when that moment comes, the goal isn't to become bitter or vengeful or hardened. The goal is to become clear. Clear about who you are. Clear about what you deserve. Clear about what you will no longer tolerate. I laughed when my brother told me he saw my wife at the airport with another man. That laugh didn't make me weak. It made me human. What mattered was what I did after the laughter stopped. I chose truth over comfort. Clarity over denial. Peace over pride. And because of that, I didn't lose my life. I reclaimed it. That's the real ending. Not a victory speech. Not a warning. Just one man, standing in a quiet room, finally living without lies. And that is enough. Years from now, this won't be the story people remember me for. They'll remember the business I built. The contracts. The warehouses. The steady work that paid mortgages and college tuitions and retirements. That's fine. But this quiet reckoning is the story I'll remember. Because it taught me something no success ever did. That life doesn't ask for your permission before it tests you. It doesn't wait until you're ready. It doesn't care how long you've been faithful, or how hard you've tried, or how much you've earned. It just shows you the truth and asks what you're going to do with it. I used to think betrayal destroyed people. Now I know better. Denial does. Betrayal only reveals what was already breaking. Every once in a while, I still catch myself replaying that morning. The sound of my brother's voice. The confidence in my laughter. The way the world felt solid and dependable right up until it didn't. I don't wish I could go back. I wouldn't change a thing. Because the man who walked through all of that, the planning, the restraint, the clarity, that man is stronger than the one who slept peacefully in ignorance. And he's the man I get to be now. I don't chase happiness anymore. I protect peace. I don't confuse love with sacrifice. I don't confuse history with loyalty. And I don't confuse silence with safety. When the sun sets in the evening and the river turns dark and still, I feel something settle inside me. Not relief. Not triumph. Alignment. My life finally matches what I know to be true. And if that phone had never rung. If my brother had looked away. If I had kept laughing. I might still be living inside a lie that felt comfortable enough to keep me asleep. Instead, I woke up. And once you wake up, you don't go back. That's the last thing I'll say. Not as a warning. Not as advice. Just as a fact. Truth has a way of finding you. And when it does, how you respond becomes the story you live with for the rest of your life. This is mine. And I'm at peace with it. After everything, life didn't suddenly become meaningful in some dramatic way. It became simple. That surprised me. I used to think peace would feel like relief, like exhaling after holding your breath too long. But peace isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It slips in quietly when you stop fighting reality and start accepting it. Some mornings, I sit by the window with a cup of coffee and watch the city wake up. People rushing. Cars honking. Someone always late for something that feels urgent in the moment. I used to live like that too, always moving, always building, always fixing. Now I let the morning happen to me. I notice things I never noticed before. The way light hits the wall. The sound of birds I can't name. The fact that my shoulders don't tense up anymore when the phone rings. That tension was there for years. I just didn't realize it. I think that's what betrayal really does. It doesn't just break trust in another person. It teaches you how long you've been living in a state of quiet vigilance without knowing why. When that vigilance disappears, you feel lighter. Not happier. Lighter. People sometimes ask if I've forgiven Ellen. I don't answer that question directly. Forgiveness implies a transaction. Something given. Something received. Closure tied up with a ribbon. This wasn't that kind of ending. I didn't forgive her. I released her. There's a difference. Forgiveness keeps the other person in the room. Release closes the door and locks it, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. I don't wonder what she's doing now. I don't imagine her regret. I don't replay conversations that never happened. Those thoughts used to visit me uninvited. They stopped coming when I stopped feeding them. Time doesn't heal everything. Attention does. Where you place it determines what survives. I placed mine on what remained instead of what was lost. Claire understands that. She never asks me to explain myself more than I want to. She never tries to fill the silence with reassurance. She lets things be what they are. That's rare. We're not building a future on promises. We're building it on consistency. On showing up the same way, day after day, without spectacle. If it lasts, it lasts. If it doesn't undo what it gave me. That's another lesson I learned too late, but not too late to use. Not everything has to be forever to be meaningful. Sometimes it just has to be honest while it exists. I used to measure my life in decades. Marriage length. Company growth. Years of loyalty. Now I measure it in moments that feel true. A conversation that doesn't require defense. A silence that doesn't feel heavy. A morning where I don't dread the day ahead. Those moments add up quietly. And one day you look around and realize you're okay. Not because nothing bad happened. But because you survived it without becoming someone you don't recognize. That's the victory no one talks about. Staying yourself when the world gives you every reason not to. If this story ever reaches someone standing at the edge of a realization they're afraid to step into, I hope they understand this. You don't need certainty to move forward. You don't need permission. You don't need to know how it ends. You just need to stop lying to yourself. The rest unfolds on its own. I laughed when my brother told me what he saw. That laugh didn't end my life. It began the part where I finally started living it with my eyes open. And that's where this truly ends. Not with answers. But with clarity. And the quiet confidence that comes from knowing. Whatever happens next, I'll see it coming. There's nothing left to add after this. Not because the story is complete in some perfect, tied-up way, but because life doesn't give you endings like that. It gives you moments where you stop carrying what no longer belongs to you, and you keep walking. That's where I am now. I don't wake up wondering what I missed. I don't replay conversations looking for hidden meanings. I don't flinch when the phone rings early in the morning. That chapter is closed. What remains is quieter. Stronger. Real. I still believe in love, but not blindly. I still believe in loyalty, but not at my own expense. I still believe in building things, but only with people who show their hands openly. The world didn't break me. It corrected me. And that correction costs less than living a lie for the rest of my life. If you take anything from this story, let it be this. Pay attention when something doesn't add up. Respect the voice that tells you to look again. And don't confuse comfort with truth. I laughed when my brother called me that morning. That laugh didn't mean I was weak. It meant I trusted. What mattered was what I did when trust was no longer an option. I chose clarity. I chose dignity. I chose myself. And that choice didn't just save me from what I lost. It gave me back the rest of my life. That's the end of the story. Not because nothing else happens after this. But because everything that happens next is finally honest.